Welcome to our March webinar, sponsored by the Educause Student Success Analytics Community Group.
Just a few housekeeping notes we're going to go through real quick. So first, talking about our fearless leaders. So we have some great leadership here that guide us within the Student Success Analytics Community Group. I call these leaders of liberatory collaboration. They're designing for and with. And so that is led by Maureen, Marcia, Simon, and Tasha. They're doing a great job of leading us in the right direction here, and which is in part why we're here today. Thanks so much for all your leadership. And then we have some steering committee members, Shariar, Melissa, Stephen, and Jason, respectively. Great folks. And then myself, Mary, Linda, and Kathy. So why do we exist? What is our leadership focused on? Our goal is really to focus on the community group, to promote, to educate, and to further a network of practitioners with a desire to improve student success through the use of analytics. And so the more we can collaborate and share on these efforts, the easier it is for us for these initiatives to grow and also to succeed. And what do? We focus on 3 specific actions: connect, share, and create. And each of those actions, you can see things that we're focused on. Newsletters, our Educause Connect, and then you can find us on LinkedIn. I'll highlight, we have a tag that we're using, Educause SSA-ACG. That's our acronym. And so you can find us there, and any sort of events that we're going to be doing, we're going to be leveraging that hashtag. So you can follow that if you'd like. Webinars, virtual brunches, like today, we're doing a webinar, publications, presentations. And then I'll highlight here in a second, but the Student Success Analytics Framework and Rubric, and then additional resources. We have a variety of resources that could be valuable to you or other folks in your respective communities and institutions or organizations. And our focus here: engagement, communications, webinars, virtual brunches, surveys, membership, resource hub, and research. So that's quite a bit. And just as I mentioned, this is a great primary example of liberatory collaboration. And this is our rubric for Student Success Analytics Framework. And we have some great authors that spent a really great amount of time working together to develop this rubric. And so you can look at this in more detail. If you want to hover over the QR codes, you can certainly leverage this and think about the purpose, the uses, actionability, and evidence. So there's some great work that was done by the authors here. And why we're here today. So why we're here today is really to highlight and allow Cynthia to share her knowledge and her expertise with us. So Dr. Cynthia Pascal is coming to us as the Associate Vice President of eLearning from Northern Virginia Community College. And Cynthia, in addition to working as the Associate Vice President of their online division, she oversees faculty services, instructional design, student services, and educational technology, support services for over 500 faculty and about 28,000 asynchronous students. So that's quite a bit. They prioritize inclusive, culturally responsive practices to promote student success through authentic engagement and open pedagogy. When she's not doing all of those things and wearing all of those hats, she supports higher education leaders in designing holistic support services, policies, and practices to better serve marginalized and non-traditional populations. So without further ado, thank you so much, Cynthia, for sharing your time and expertise with us, and I will turn it over to you. Oh, sorry, one last point. You can connect with us here, QR code. There's some links here. We'll be sharing out this content after the presentation. So just that bit.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'm hoping that you can see my slides. Of course, as the presenter, it looks very wonky on my side. My name is Cynthia Pascal. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am just tickled to be here today. Y'all, I am a glutton for punishment, which is why I dived in headfirst into artificial intelligence. I like to get creative. I like to push boundaries. And the only thing that really makes me an expert in this field, I was joking with Michael, is the fact that I have shoulder pads. So one of the things that you'll find is this is going to be one person's opinion, and that this opinion is rooted in research, but there's many other approaches that we're going to be talking about today. I will also say that this meeting is being recorded and is ADA accessible through captioning. I also have the slides available for afterwards. Please feel free to reach out to me. These are open resource slides. I really believe in open pedagogy and anti-racist pedagogy, and I want to make sure that the good news of the work that is going on at community colleges, at four-year institutions, is shared widely. So without further ado, let's talk about community colleges. We are a little bit different than your four-year institution. So I'm going to approach this topic from a very specific lens. Our institution are open access, which means you do not have to really do anything other than apply to be eligible to attend. Really, you just have to have not a dangerous criminal record, and we'll let you in. And that means that we have a lot of students who are here from a wide breadth and scope of backgrounds, and they all have different goals to get through the college, and we'll have a lot of barriers. So when me and my team do any of our work at Nova Online, we keep our college's strategic plan at the forefront of all the work we're doing. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, so that we level set the conversation. Anything we do here is going to have access in mind. How do we make it equitable for all students, regardless of your socioeconomic background, your language, things of that nature, your abilities, specifically to high demand, high wage programs. We want to retain you. Again, it's very easy to get into college. It's very easy to drop out of college when you're at an institution like a 2-year. That's mostly because we have other responsibilities that come way before being a student. Completion, we always want to make sure that we can get students through the class, but also through the finish line. And that will help them either go to a transfer institution, which is generally a 4-year school, or get a job. We are into social and economic mobility. And spoiler alert, artificial intelligence and generative AI helps students gain access to social and economic mobility. I'm going to explain that after I explain what we're doing today. So just like our students, I like you guys to know exactly what we're doing today. So this is going to be our agenda. And I hope by the time that you leave here, you at least leave with the tools that I'm going to give you. Please bring out your camera for this, because I'm going to give you QR codes, and then you can link to them directly. I have these links saved on my favorites toolbar. You can save them wherever you like. But this is what we're going over today. So let's get to the fun part. Before we get started, this is the softball questions I'm going to give you guys that kind of going to break the ice. And that is, what is your belief system when it comes to artificial intelligence and generative AI? I'm going to use them interchangeably, by the way. Are you, oh my gosh, yes, let's do this, dive in head first? Are you someone who's like, I'd like to know more, but like, I'm not against it, but I'd like to know more? Or are you someone who is a no never? There's a place for each one of these groups, by the way, in this conversation, and each one of these groups at your institution. Just like anything else, there's a time and place for everything, but that's the softball question I want you guys to think about. That being said, I want you to know what I believe, right? So that you know exactly where my biases lie. A lot about artificial intelligence has to do with biases. And so I believe that it's my responsibility as a leader to promote 21st century information literacy skills, meaning I want my students not only to be able to perform well on, simple quizzes, but I don't want them to do rote stuff, right? I don't want them to just be like, the definition of this is this. True or false, multiple choice. I want them to be able to actually apply what it is they're using. I also believe that It should be a tool for learning and not cheating, meaning I'm not here to teach you how to cheat better as a student. I'm here to help you promote information literacy and ethics and becoming a global citizen while critical thinking. I also believe that everybody, not just students, need to learn how to use AI ethically and responsibly. I will tell you, most of these slides were edited with the help of artificial intelligence because your girl's dyslexic. And so it really closes the gap with accessibility for this young lady. I believe it's essential for students to understand how these tools are being applied and augment their own intellectual work, not just like replace it and just be like, this is what AI says, and we're going to go over what that synthesized learning looks like in a minute. And last but not least, I'm not a big fan of cut and pasting. If you're cutting and pasting, chances are you're closer to cheating than you are to critical thinking. And so that's my belief system. So as you think about your belief system today, let that guide you and be your intuitive monitor. Why does that make me feel icky? Why does, if something looks stinky and smells stinky, it's probably stinky, right? So what's stinky to you? What feels really exciting and new? And keep an open mind when you feel though either emotion or anything in between. What is that bringing up for you and why? Question everything, I guess. So I want you guys to take a picture of communicating your own beliefs and expectations. If you have a mobile device, that's the easiest way to do that. If you've never used a QR code or if you're out of practice, you simply open up your camera app, you point it at the QR code, and it's going to pop up a resource. This resource is an open source resource that's being put together by leaders in the field that says where they're at. You'll notice some of the people are very like artificial intelligence. No, never. And they're allowed to have that opinion. Some people are like, yes, you can totally use it, but when I say so. And other people are like me that throw open the door and say, caution to the wind. Let's dive in head first. And I think these are some really great opportunities to kind of gauge your feelings and where you're at. And to also recognize that where you are today might not be where you're at even next week. One of the women who are joining us today is at NASPA in Seattle. And I suspect after going to some new presentations that are out there in the field to see what others are doing, that perception might change, right? So it's okay to change your perception. And here are some great options to do that. I will say this, if you have something that works, make it accessible to others too. There is a little form on the top that you can add your own information to. And thank you for putting the QR code in. I really appreciate you all for being a great support to me. And Cynthia prefers the Dr. Sean Neufer approach. Dr. Sean Neufer is a super awesome guy who you'll see running around at different conferences, especially at the Online Learning Consortium. I just think he's a pretty neat dude. His approach is fully on that open source site I just gave you. But one of the things I thought was really cool when he explored how he feels is he not only tells his students about his expectations, but he clarifies the why and he gives them new tools. And that's what we're talking about today. When we're talking about critical media literacy and understanding the ethical use of artificial intelligence, we're giving people constraints. We're giving them, what is it when you're at the bowling alley and you put those guardrails in, right? We're giving them little bumpers. And so he says, you know what? I think this is important for the modern workplace. I want you to know how to do it. This is important to me. This should be important to you. Bop, 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 bop. But while ChatGPT can be useful in generating ideas and providing basic structures for writing assignments, it is not suitable for critical thinking, research, and analysis. So he gives those borders, right? Always review and edit text generated by ChatGPT. Again, don't copy and paste to ensure it's accurate, appropriate, and relevant to the assignment. I'm going to show you an example later. That's a spoiler alert. Use it as a tool. Again, I said I like to use it as a tool for learning, not a tool for cheating. Use the right tool for your toolbox. And then last but not least, he says, let's do it ethically. Like, let's use it responsibly. Let's show respect. Let's cite when communicating the work we're using. Again, I said it's the Dr. Shannufer approach. When I told him I was using this, he goes, Cynthia, it's your approach now. I said, okay, yeah, right. This is his approach. He had a good idea. I'm citing it. He's a cool dude, giving the credit where it's due, and then moving on. And so I really like that. He gives a lot of parameters in his syllabus, and you might have some great ideas too that you want to add to yours. So what is critical media literacy? I keep saying it. It's actually something we learned to do already. Critical media literacy is really centered in engaging thorough and inquisitive examinations of content through the lens of critical thinking. It predominantly involves asking rigorous questions about media text and the biases inherent in it. And if you remember back in the day when computers first came out and Google came out, or when we first got social media, there were conversations around this. These are the same. Critical media literacy is the same for Google as it is for artificial intelligence. It's looking at the information and say, is this a reliable source? If so, how do I know? And it's same how you, where do you get your, I don't know, voter information? It's the same critical thinking skills. It's just using it with a different lens. So this tool is by and large the seminal tool, I think, of our AI generation. And that might be an overstatement, but I don't care. I like to overstate. It's recorded. I'm also hopped up on coffee for lunch. It is what it is. But this picture, if you take it on the upper right-hand corner, arguably one of the best resources you're going to see for digital media literacy. It's going to have a lot of media literacy in there, but it's going to give you those conversation starters because this is a conversation. I come from a psychology background. My doctorate's in educational psychology, so using psychology in ... education. So oftentimes when I create my syllabus, I will work with my students and say, what are our norms for this class? What do we think is acceptable and what do we think is not acceptable? Where are our boundaries and our comfort levels? And so to start that conversation, you have oh, you got it, Jennifer. Someone's going to do that for you because we have a team of people who are awesome in this room. So we got you. So these are some of the questions that you could be asking yourself or asking your class. Again, you have to kind of level set yourself first. You got to put that oxygen mask on yourself first before putting it on other people. What are your thoughts? Well, let's practice. You know, who created AI tools? Think about when artificial intelligence, when we use tools for things like proctoring, right? We have a lot of proctoring artificial intelligence out there now. Well, proctoring artificial intelligence was created in Western European culture, and therefore it recognizes Western European faces in a very specific way and can identify them. Anyone who's not of that descent gets flagged. That tells us a lot. Who created that tool is really important when we're talking about critical media literacy. What data set was used to train that tool? Using that same example, a bunch of faces that look like this young lady. I like how I keep calling myself young. I think it's wishful thinking. A lot of people who look like me, you know, have Western American, English, Norwegian, Italian features. That's who it recognizes first. Everything else, it's like, I don't know, that's kind of odd. So how does the lack of diversity then impact it? If it's only people who look like Cynthia and talk like Cynthia and are raised in the framework of Cynthia creating these data sets, what does that do for everybody else? Spoiler alert again, you're going to see. Where are the limitations of this tool? What happens when it's not connected to the internet? What happens when you're in a different country? My students represent 180 different countries. They mentioned in my bio that I'm from a huge institution. A lot of our students are world travelers. What happens to artificial intelligence when you say travel overseas? And who is harmed and who benefits from these tools? What kind of biases are being regenerated? I really, really, again, this link, I posted it all over the place, picture, bottom of the slide, wherever, use it. It gives you some great foundational questions. And then you're gonna, after you talk about that with yourself, figure it out for yourself, talk to your students about it. That's teaching, right? Then it's, it's teaching them how to suss things out. Just like when we first learned how to use Google for the first time, or Bing, or Ask Jeeves, teaching them the skill of saying, okay, what the slides will be shared. What information is presented in the text? So what is it actually saying, right? Is it missing anything? I looked at some things about the Civil War and World War II today, and the first go round was really, really low in it was slavery, and really, really low in it was the Holocaust. It was like the first thing was like, let's talk about the access of powers, and I only asked for 100 words. But the crux of what I feel like was important at that time is way at the bottom as a blip. And so again, going back to who does that harm or who does that benefit, it tells a story. What type of language of word choices are used to convey ideas? The example I'm going to give you is going to be really uncomfortable and obvious in about a minute. How reliable and accurate and credible is the information, and how did you determine it? The determining it is the critical thinking part. It's using our experience, using research to say, is this working for me? Does this make sense? Or is this sending up orange flags or red flags? And what biases are present? This goes back to that same exact resource I just shared. I just wanted to make sure it was repeated, so credit is where credit's due. But this is the example I gave. I literally told ChatGPT, also known as OpenAI, I use that one every day for my work. It's the free version because I can afford free. And I said, hey, ChatGPT, can you write a paragraph about two professors walking? And I was hoping that maybe you guys could help me suss out, using the questions that we asked earlier, what are some things like you're like, huh, that's sketchy. And if you can use the chat for that, that's great. I'll tell you what I saw automatically. First, I'll read it to you. Two professors stroll through the university campus, their academic robes billowing slightly in the breeze. The older professor, with graying hair and a distinguished air, walks with a stack of papers under one arm, deep in conversation with his younger colleague. The younger professor, carrying a worn leather briefcase, listens intently, occasionally nodding and gesturing as they discuss their latest research papers or perhaps debate philosophical concepts. Behind them, the lush greenery of campus provides a picturesque backdrop, while students bustle past on their way to classes, paying little heed to the scholarly figures lost in conversation. So I'm going to go to the chat to see if anyone participated. It doesn't look like it, but that's okay. The first thing I wanted you to notice as a community college member, I am a full rank professor. I did that through time and energy and education, and I am not at a university. So right out of the gate, it says university campus. I'm not at a university, I'm community college. I'm also not at a campus. So when I take walks, it's often just taking walks. It might be with a colleague of mine. They're academic robes. I don't know about you, but I wear academic robe one time a year. That is during graduation. Our graduation's always on Mother's Day, so it's also usually under like my Sunday dress, and it's super sweaty and gross. There is never any billowing breezes on that day, for the record. The older professor with graying hair, granted, I'm an older professor who has gray hair, but I dye my hair, has a distinguished air. I am not distinguished. You should see me walking around. Walks with a stack of papers. I'm paperless. Under one arm, deep in conversation with his younger colleague. The younger professor, carrying a worn leather briefcase, listens intently, occasionally nodding and gesturing as they discuss their latest research papers. Even something, I like that, the worn leather briefcase, very male-centric, absolutely. Even, I said walking, but the assuming that both of them have the ability to walk. There's ableism there. It's this thing of like, what are we saying to the thing? Well, I gave it a really simple prompt. I just said, write something, right? But words have meanings. And when we're talking about synthesizing information, we need to teach our students how to synthesize that, right? And I like what Marcia said, because the first one's his, you kind of assume the second one's his. Well, Dolly is a sister product to ChatGPT. Oh, apparently I get my first phone call in weeks, and it's during this presentation. I apologize for that, folks. It's a sister product to OpenAI. And I just said the same thing. Hey, Dolly, tell me what two professors walking looks like. This is what Dolly says. This is what two professors walking looks like. It's on a traditional campus. You know, I like that kind of, not cobblestone, but the brick road. Again, they're wearing robes. I don't wear robes. But you know, in one picture, it's like, cool. This guy has a beard. Well, this guy doesn't. Both of them have glasses. Yeah, and even if a pronoun is not used, the professor was two professors walking. I didn't use a pronoun. I intentionally didn't do that because I know about prompt engineering. I knew what it was going to do to us. But yeah, they're both gray hair, middle age. And I would like to ask, which one is the younger professor? Based on this thing, they say the guy in with the weathered attaché. But this is the kind of conversation that you need to have with your students. Where's this data pull? You know, going back to those original questions that we asked, what information is being presented? What is missing? What type of language and word choices are used to convey the ideas? How reliable, accurate, and credible is the text or picture? What sources, if any, are cited? Nothing cited on that. Notice that. A new resource just got dropped in the chat, so I'm going to be stealing that later. And why might this be? This is really critical information, again, to teach your students how to use it ethically and responsibly and do no harm, but also to ensure that you're promoting, and this goes back to that student side, a sense of belonging. I don't feel like I belong when I see pictures like this. It doesn't represent me. It certainly doesn't represent my student, and it doesn't represent my institution. So really teaching that skill set. So this goes into prompt engineering. I gave it a very simple prompt, a very unhelpful prompt, some might say. I said, two professors walking. I told it I want two. I want them professors. You know, I didn't say faculty or adjunct or whatever. I just used that term, and it associated it with university professors. And then walking, again, walking can mean a lot of things. In this case, it meant, you know, two able-bodied male professors. That wasn't enough information. And so as we're teaching students about not only how to synthesize the information that they see and be like, oh, that's real or that's terrible, we have to teach them how to do it the right way, right? We know what bad looks like. It's kind of like, oh, I can't remember who said it. The definition of pornography, you'll know it when you see it. It's the same thing with artificial intelligence. You'll know it when you see it. Bad artificial intelligence is very clear. If you do an abstract for your own work about AI, you know, maybe for a conference or for a paper, it'll say, in the ever-changing world or the evolving world of technology. That's how it always starts it. And I don't know where artificial intelligence got that. But those are the, like, when you know it, you'll say it, you're like, oh, that was written by AI. So teaching people prompt engineering helps them purposely create language that promotes critical thinking. So prompt engineering is just a modern term for writing something that tells artificial intelligence what specifically you want. When I was in school, they said it's the who, what, when, where, why, how, right? And so it's designing and crafting prompts or questions that are applicable to the subject in hand. I knew I was talking to you guys today. I knew you guys probably worked at a college or institution. So I did the two professors example. If you're teaching psychology, use a psychology example. If you're teaching chemistry, use a chemistry example. If you're teaching English, use an English example. And give the students an opportunity to test it out. I provided another resource that everybody was that many people were kind enough to put it in chat, excuse me. But when we write these prompts, also talk to students about inclusivity, right? Again, that belongingness. So instead of saying, using that saying two professors walking, I could have said something a lot more specific. I want two professors at a modern community college who are conversing about artificial intelligence and the strengths that it might bring to their classroom, in the lunchroom, after a heavy meal. Well, that's going to give me major different, that's going to give me major different vibes than what we just saw. As the who, what, when, where, why, how. Chances are that what it's going to give me, that prompt, is going to start off clunky, kind of like this. It's not going to be perfect. It might do stuff in the first person. It might do stuff in the third person. A lot of times because of the previous data I use, I do a lot of announcements in ChatGPT. And so it goes back to, well, what does Cynthia like to do? She likes to do announcements for her courses. And so it'll write it as an announcement first. So I have to be very mindful of who I'm saying my audience is. But it's teaching students that, right? It's teaching them how to use new skill sets. While you're doing that, you're teaching yourself that new skill set, right? And you're further refining your own work. So as you develop your student skills, you're also developing your own skills. I love that people are posting in chat some of the different prompts that they just generated. It's super cool. And finally, this is the part where a lot of people are hesitant to use artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence right now is still a very taboo topic. For the record, artificial intelligence has happened well before this past year, right? Chatbots. At my bank, I use an app to scan my checks. Like that's all artificial intelligence. Grammarly, spell check, all artificial intelligence. This isn't new. This is just a new level of uncomfortability because something's new, right? So I've been hearing a lot about academic integrity. So I just wanted to address that before we end with our question and answer part, and give you some advice. Work with your students and with artificial intelligence and not against it. The reality is our employers are already using it in the workplace. And so if we are not teaching our students ethical and responsible artificial intelligence and how to synthesize information and how to make excellent prompt engineers, engineered questions and things of that nature, we're not setting them up with 21st century work skills. And so they're not going to be as competitive in the labor market. It's important to establish clear guidelines early and often and as many places as possible. So I put it in my syllabus. I also put it in my Ask the Professor. I also put it pretty much anywhere that I have an assignment. At my school, our assignments are really fixed in terms of we do templated curriculum, but faculty are allowed to add whatever they want. They just simply can't take away because we want to make sure our learning objectives aren't met. So I add this information to the beginning of each assignment. I say, this is the expectation of a college, but Dr. Pascal says this as well. And I make sure it's clear and transparent. And that's important, right? Transparency allows students to meet your expectation and reduce the, I didn't know it was wrong, everybody else is doing it, and reduces the amount of unnecessary code of conduct and academic integrity violations you might see. When possible, if you're scared, you're allowed to be scared. Create collaborative assignments. Have students work together to do this. It doesn't, that also, collaborative assignments is a form of authentic assessment that really minimizes cheating, right? So if you're concerned about cheating and think that artificial intelligence is the gateway drug to cheating, you're allowed to have that opinion, but there's a lot of ways to reduce that fear and discomfort as a faculty member. And that's by, again, putting these guidelines in place, being transparent, but also setting them up to work with others. Peer reviews are great tools. We've been using that a lot at my institution and growing. We're also using artificial intelligence to help with those peer reviews and integrative technology within in social annotation within our assignments. It has been just delightful to see that type of authentic assessment being engaged early in students' careers. And then again, if students don't know how to cite, they will not cite. And you're like, well, that's not my job. I teach math. Cool, 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 cool. I'm glad you don't think that's your job, but you might be surprised that students don't cite in your class and you might not know why that's not happening. If you don't give them the tool to succeed, they don't have the tool to succeed. And so it might not be a conversation that you have in an in-person class, for instance. It could go in your syllabus. It can go into your assignments. You can have a library specialist come into your class, things of that nature, just to show them what to do. Is it MLA? Is it APA? Teach them how to cite and teach them what poor citing is. AI will cite to stuff that is not real. So what does that look? How do you work that way backwards? And that critical media literacy tool I gave you earlier, that actually gives you some really great tips and tricks for that. And last but not the least, I have to stand on my soapbox tall and proud. I believe in authentic assessment. I don't believe memorization and true false questions are the road to learning. And because of that, I encourage you all to embrace authentic assessment and embrace tools that help enhance students' ability to demonstrate learning. And I think this is one of many ways where students can demonstrate their learning through effective prompt engineering and effective assignments. So that's me on my soapbox. Again, it's one person's opinion, but I think it's a good opinion. So I'll put that there on record. Last but not least, it's question and answer time. I left a lot of questions for you, or time for questions for you guys, because if you're like me, you have questions. This is all new. And sometimes I don't know what to think. Again, this tool, this presentation is it is recorded. I also am providing the slides so that you're able to use them yesterday, when it's sent out. They are ADA accessible, so please feel free to share them with others. And now I'm going to stop share and go full screen on y'all.
Cynthia, KT Moran was asking if you can share some guidelines that you provide for assignments.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the things that I do is I do a lot of transparent design. Okay, so transparent design, sometimes you'll hear, this is not an actual model, working your way backwards. That's the kind of concept, is working your way backwards. Transparent design is the actual thought process. And so what I do is I give students all the tools they need to succeed in an assignment. I use artificial intelligence to design my rubrics. There is a couple different rubric tools you can use. One is called, nope, I don't have my cheat sheet with me. Ruby something. I'll get it to you in a minute. But so I do the transparent design there. But one of the things I do is literally that Dr. Sean Newfer approach. I use that with my assignments. So I spell out what I am expecting of them. What does it look like to have a successful assignment? What does it look like to have an assignment that sucks scissors, right? I spell it out. And then I say when they can use it and how they can use it. Again, giving them tips. When I've done this assignment on my own, here's what it looks like. When I've seen STAR students do it, here's what it looks like. Here's how I know you're cheating. And actually, one of the things we have in our academic integrity video for our orientation are videos of students telling others how annoyed they are when people cheat. And so talking about, I know you used artificial intelligence in this class because of XYZ. And so teaching them how to do it good and bad. If anyone would like to follow up with me later, I'm going to put my email in the chat so that you can, if you want to look at specific examples. I have some of my favorite people here. Sharon Prupus is here and Karen Severin here, and these are part of my dream teams. But we are all about open pedagogy and open design. So if I don't have it for my own class, I teach psychology, I can get it to you. Chances are, if I'm not doing it, somebody else is doing it. So if you're chemistry, math, whatever, we can give you examples in the field. Yay,
Yeah.
Karen, I'm waving. That's a thing.
Yeah, what's your opinion on detecting AI work? So recently in the news, the Princess of Wales was published photograph with a missing ring, which was a big problem. And many instructors wonder if AI can be detected in writing. What are your thoughts about detecting AI work?
Sure. So I think that's a cultural question, right? What's acceptable, right? And so for me, culturally, I accept that artificial intelligence is part of the 21st century, right? And I fully expect things to have a filter on it. For instance, this picture I have, this gorgeous design I have as my background is a really junky road outside. I put that there because I don't want you to see the dang road. My picture behind me has Photoshop. Like, it's expected in my classroom. I expect that you're gonna need to touch up here and there. And so I say, you're allowed to do that, right? In my class, you're allowed to do that. I'll tell you what you're not allowed to do. And I really set up those cultural expectations. I also set up the cultural expectation that I am one of thousands of instructors at this college. And what works for my class, even if you're in the same course, maybe you had to withdraw for some reason or taking another course, not going to be acceptable in the other class. So I teach my students where to look in my syllabus, but also I just speak broadly. This is where you should look for that information. It is not culturally acceptable at my college to use artificial intelligence yet. I suspect it will in the next 5 years, but change is hard. And so I think it's just one of those things that you have to be very clear and level set expectations. I also think I have to be very clear with my peers what I think is acceptable. My opinion is just one opinion. That's why I kept saying I have biases, because I have biases. I'm all in. My different departments, I'm not going to shout them out here today, believe that you cannot use AI ethically and responsibly in the classroom, and they're trying to take courses offline as a result of that. And that's great for them. So they close off access to thousands of students to affordable education. So I have a real problem with that. So how do you meet them in between? You teach them how to set cultural expectations in their classrooms. So it's not necessarily what I'm doing in my classroom. They could care less, especially since I'm not a full-time professor, right? I'm an administrator who has professor ranked and teaches as an adjunct. And so I say, have you thought about going to artificial intelligence training? Have you thought about joining our excellent presentations on how to build a classroom that level sets expectations? And I think that's really important. And then last, to really speak to your specific questions, what are you trying to achieve? If you're trying to catch students cheating, you will catch them whether they're using artificial intelligence or not. You know, it is a really big talking point where I work to have everybody go back to campus and take in-person tests. You have to, because they're going to cheat. All students are cheaters. Everybody knows that. That's a real fixed mindset, right? Using a growth mindset, I say that might be true. Some students might cheat, but what if they don't? You know, and as someone who oversaw a testing center for many years in one of my first roles at an institution, guess what? They cheat in person. They write things on the side of their mugs. They write stuff inside their pens. They write stuff on their hands, on their legs. You know, they bring in cards. It doesn't change cheating. So what exactly are you trying to catch? And I think that's really important to have that conversation. And if you really feel that all students are going to cheat and want to cheat, you're entitled to that, but I would like you to consider reading some growth mindset literature. There's some really good stuff out there, and it's free through your library.
A quick follow-up. So I think as people, we are quick to accept bias of our own thoughts. And you're an instructor, you have authority, you accept that you have bias. Why do you think it is that we feel that AI should not have bias?
Yeah. I think everybody's looking for the magic wand or the, panacea solution for anything, right? Everybody wants the gold standard. And so they assume there's not iterations of things. So where ChatGPT, I'm going to use ChatGPT specifically as an example, was a year ago is very different than where it is now. It's been data mining for years and using people's feedback, like myself, that says thumbs up, thumbs down. Why thumbs down? This makes no sense. Like, that's why thumbs down. It's been using that information to kind of say like, oh, this is working. This isn't. I need to change my algorithm. It is always going to be biased, right? Because it's grabbing from data from all over the world. The other thing is it's not very predictive. For instance, I'm gonna challenge you to think a little bit. And I didn't have any slides on this, so you're gonna have to use your creative brain. When you think about high school GPAs, you think about people being like, oh my gosh, I'm doing so well in school. I'm doing great. I'm going to go to college. And there's an assumption that they're still going to continue doing great and traject upwards, right? Because they were great in high school. Clearly, they're going to be great in college. That's not how predictive analytics work. If you work in a college, you actually know that students don't necessarily start off on the same footing they did in high school. They have to learn new norms, new expectations, things like that. And a lot of times, instead of going up, 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 like they did in high school, they actually tank. Many of them drop out, things like that. So the data and analytics isn't quite, it's not a human yet. And so it doesn't know what we know. And so you have to use your intelligence to synthesize that information, right? And that's why you have to look at everything with a critical lens. Which is where that skill set comes in, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I would like everybody to be unbiased, but like that's just not how it works. And we can't expect that of technology either. It's just not there yet. Maybe one day. There's so many things in the chat and I can't read that fast. So someone else gets to do it while I sip coffee.
We talked about Turnitin for a moment there. Do you think that we will have, say, Safe Assign or Turnitin tools that are going to help us to identify images that have been updated if it's a art class, and then if it's a writing class versus coding class, that maybe technology will help us to catch where students were supposed to do something on their own versus they use the AI help?
Think that's part of it. I think you used the right word, catch. What are we trying to achieve? So one of the things that it can do, if I have an artist background and I'm in a relationship with an artist, and oftentimes if we do cool pieces, we put them immediately on Facebook because they're cool. And, he is an artist specifically in a world that leads are generated on social media. So he might do something really cool for assignment that immediately is on LinkedIn and Facebook. Not LinkedIn. That's not true. Instagram and Facebook. So him and myself would automatically be flagged as cheaters for an assignment. The same thing goes with anything else. Sometimes stuff, when you're data mining about, again, using the Civil War, World War II, you're going to get kind of similar information. You're going to get students talking about the Axis and the Allies. You're going to get students talking about the Holocaust. You're going to get Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So you're going to hear things regardless. So if you're trying to catch students, let me save you the time. If that's your mindset, you will catch students. Matter of fact, you'll probably catch every student. That help is not helpful. And it doesn't necessarily tell the full story, right? And so that's one of the things when we go into learning with the growth mindset is what are we trying to achieve and how will we know learning has happened? And so really, what are we trying to measure? If we're trying to measure whether or not students cheat or not, you're 100% you're going to get, for Turnitin or whatever tool du jour tool du jour, it's going to give you some percentage. It is what it is. It might also give you a 0%. A 0% means they've done something super creative and have cheated, almost entirely probable that they've cheated. And here's some fun examples. I had one student write an entire paper that was a 0%. I go, that's weird. And they had put all the spaces in between the paper. They had put the letter I, but in clear. So they just did Control I, Control I, Control I. So all the words were misspelled, and I couldn't figure out why that was. I thought it maybe was that I had it on the wrong. I didn't have it on. They didn't have it on English, kind of thing. But what it was is they copied and pasted an entire paper and put clear letter I's in it. And I was like, oh, that's creative and smart. Another student, in Turnitin, put an image of the copied paper. And so it came back as 0%. So a low percentage in those artificial intelligence also doesn't mean someone hasn't cheated. But I will put this out there. Using that growth mindset, I knew they had cheated because I figured it out after talking with my colleagues and being like, I don't understand how I got a 0%. The tool's broken. I then asked them why they felt they had to do that. And that's where that growth mindset comes in. If you use artificial intelligence in my class the wrong way, we're going to have a conversation about it because that's going to come up later. And I'm going to be really nice about it because I'm really nice. And I'm not going to ruin your transcript with a big black box that's going to take away we're right by the Pentagon. So it's going to take your Secret Service clearance away. I'm not going to do that to you, but we're going to have a conversation. And so that's part of it too. Just understand not the how, but the why. They're going to cheat if they want to cheat. It is what it is. But what you do with that information afterwards is what's helpful.
Thank you. Fabiana asks, it will take some time to redo all assignments so that they are less of a temptation to cheat, which suddenly has become so easy. Are there some quick fixes to old assignments you can recommend?
Let me tell you about generative AI. So if you haven't touched tools like ChatGPT, like Claude, I gotta pull this out for you guys, like Ruby, like Annotate. Let me see. I got this really good one at the ITC conference recently, and I was just like, it's a game changer. Annotate Pro. And Ruby Star is the one I was looking for. I'm sorry, Ruby Star, RUBI, like rubric star. Throw them in there and say, you know, these are the learning objectives I'm trying to achieve. How can we do that? One of the partners that's here on the call today, I mentioned her name earlier, Karen Sever. She's our director of instructional design and development, and she's a rock star. And her and I did an innovative incubator teaching students how to do business entrepreneurship with no background in business and entrepreneurship, but we wanted students to explore. And in community colleges, you really don't have that chance. We put all that together using ChatGPT, including the rubrics, and we were able to do it within like a couple of hours for some really creative things. And then we had our peers take a look at it to say, does this make sense? We're a bunch, you know, we have no background in this, and so you really can throw it out there. The other thing is there's open educational resources for almost every subject. Even today we were talking about sonography out of all things, and there was all these LibGuides and OER resources. So you might not be able to design your own stuff fast, or you might not feel comfortable using the artificial intelligence yet. There's other resources out there. And last but not least, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You don't have to change everything. You can change some. It's minor changes that will lead to the bigger picture. And as for help, that's, you know, at our school, we have a whole team that trains and nobody asks them for help. So often their office hours go unanswered. So if you have like a center for teaching and learning, chances are they have something, a peer group or someone who can support you with making those changes as well.
Thank you very much. One more question. Do you have a cutoff point for the percentage of generative submissions?
No clue. Honestly, I wish I could tell you. I don't know that that's even information that's really being researched yet. And mostly because the technology is going faster than the technology. I know that sounds weird. I hope it made sense. So artificial intelligence is outpacing the tools that it would normally do to catch it, like turnitin.com was one of the examples we used. So, rather than worrying about the numbers, we focus on what we're good at, which is the learning. And again, our question always tilted, how are you making sure learning's happening? Versus how are we ensuring cheating is not happening? It's less about the how are we ensuring it's not to how are we ensuring this is happening. And we know learning is happening when students can demonstrate this. Bloom's taxonomy. We get a little Bloom's taxonomy wheels. When students are doing this, that's the part that's important, less about the data and more about the end results and outcomes.
Sounds good. Thank you. This was a really great presentation. We really appreciate the time it took to prepare and to present. Michael, do you want to say a few words?
Thanks, Simon, and thanks for moderating the chat and everything like that. This is great. For all of us that are here and have been engaged in listening and learning and chatting with each other. Cynthia, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. All of the resources for my institution, we're going through a process of trying to decide how do we use and leverage AI in teaching, research, and governance. And the wealth of information you provided just in this short bit of time today will make positive implications and impacts on those that are making these difficult decisions from institutional administration lens, but in the individual classroom. So it's going to benefit our students, no question.
Wonderful. Well, I really encourage everybody, please keep in touch, not only with me, but with the other people in the room. You guys are the thought leaders, right? And so the fact that you're in the room says you have a key to willingness in the door of artificial intelligence. And now it's what to do with that key. So keep in touch with each other as well. I noticed you guys did put a link up for how to get engaged in this group. And I really encourage for those of you who aren't engaged to get started.
One final thought here for those that were able to attend today. Hopefully I'm sharing the right screen. Yep. You are certainly welcome to join us in the future. Again, with the, I can share the link here. So those of you that are not leveraging QR codes, that's okay. So please feel free to join us within this community. Oops, sorry about that. And stay tuned for next opportunities to engage with us, whether it be a webinar or other opportunities in the future. This information will be shared out after the recording is done, so you can look forward to that and look forward to the next opportunities to engage. Thank you so much.